or on the computer. Hello, Jose. Thank you so much for joining me again for the second time, or first time this year anyway, to talk about your journey as a CEO of Citgo, what happened in the wake of November 2016, if I'm right.
2017.
Oh, 2017. And what followed from there. Your story, we've discussed it already on the podcast, which was a wonderful interview, which I'm still thankful for you to have done with me, and feeling very, very honored with what you shared. But for our listeners, this is going to go on my page and you'll be free to share it. Probably also, I was thinking of putting it on YouTube so that that's easy to share everywhere. You just wrote a book, a memoir called From Hero to Villain, which you're promoting at the moment. That's shares the story of you surviving 5 years of captivity in Venezuela, as the CEO of a company, and where you and your colleagues, were there six of you, if I
We
remember
were, we,
right?
yeah, we were six, and that's why we were our name that the press put up was the Citgo Six, because we
Okay.
worked with the Citgo Petroleum, and we were six. So they baptized us Citgo Six.
Okay. Well, it's a real tragedy, the story of what happened to you and your colleagues. It must have been a tremendous shock, not just the shock on the day, because it lasted for 5 years. And I just want to go back to a couple of facts that I've gathered from the book. Sadly, I haven't finished reading the book for this interview, but we're just going to go with the flow, and I'm sure you can share a lot of the information. But you like the first 10 chapters of your book describe in a lot of detail the political and economic situation of the time, because it's very relevant to what happened, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Um, it seemed that the company you worked for had this sort of holding company that was making decisions that weren't actually aligned with normal corporate decisions due to their linked to the Venezuelan government. So you were almost like trying to act, or you were acting, actually. I'm sorry, it's not yet you were trying. You were acting with the governance that, Western companies have, or in the US or in Europe, but you were constantly under threat from that holding company and the government that had their own agenda. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah, and that's exactly the problem that we were facing, because we were here in a U.S. based company with following U.S. law, and these guys in Venezuela, they're crazy guys doing their own agenda, as you said. So for me, it was really a nightmare having to be facing that in the middle of the political tension that was going in that moment. I took the presidents of that company, I believe, that the worst moment of the story. And by
Yeah.
the way, I don't say it there, but there is a chapter that they at the end, this guy went so crazy that they took a decision that today the company is almost lost. It's there is a trial going on here in the U.S. because of that decision they took. But we were in the political nightmare trying to maintain the company
The
secure.
integrity.
But we had, Angie, you as lawyer know that we had this corporate holding in top of us that the decision were taken from the Venezuelan guys, and that was our challenge, because we were trying to keep the company safety at this level in the U.S., but in top of us, they were taking another decision, and that was the way that this case began. So that's why in my book I had to describe it so that people understand, because one of the things for me was something important to tell the story this way, because my book has like two blocks. The first block is how the Citgo Six case was created, all the political, economical implications. And the second part is where begins that story that I have been talking about when we were capturing our 5 years of captivity, because this is another story where all the political implication to take our release. So there's like two movies in
Yeah.
end, one of the things that for me was important, Angie, is because when our case happened, our case was the most high politics case in Venezuela, I believe, in many times, because when the negotiation to get us released began directly with the U.S. government in 2021, the first time that the ambassador, the final rescue, the ambassador Roger Castro, landed in Venezuela, was the first time a U.S. officer landed in the previous 5 years. So literally our case was what reopened the relationship between the two countries. So it was a very big thing, and it's going to be part of the story of Venezuela. Our case is going to become part
so
of
you're part of history, well, Jose, huh? Are you? Yeah.
Part, and let me tell you, and the conclusion of our case is even worse, because at the end we were swapped by the two nephews of the president of Venezuela. So how can that be part of the story of Venezuela? Our story is going to be written in the books of the Venezuela story in the years to come. It's going to be part of the contemporary story of Venezuela. So maybe in other countries not relevant, but in Venezuela this is really relevant. But you know what happened? Our case always was treated in the surface, because the press was talking 6 American Venezuelan guys that were captured as hostages, and they never went deep diving in the consequences in the case. So that for me was relevant to tell the story. And the other thing, that we were always named the Citgo Six. Everybody always knew us as the Citgo Six. So I wanted to put faces to the people. So now the people find me. Now that people know that Jose Pereira was one of the Citgo Six. So that's why I took my time to publish my book, because I wanted to first get my work out. And by the way, one of the first podcasts I did was with you. It was a wonderful podcast, because I discovered all the spiritual side that we went through, because at the end, this is the second legacy that I want to put in my book, is that we found that because the situation we went through, and when the 6 of us did it great, because the 6, we did it great, and we create, as I always say, like a survivor plan, that we discovered a lot of inner forces that we didn't know that we had it. And now the inner forces, we discovered that we had all that connection with the spirituality. In my case, I'm a God believer. So I discovered that we had that connection. And by the way, today I'm very connected to my church. That's my consequence today in my life.
I think that's a very moving story. And I want to ask you more questions about that and your reconnection to the divine. And it doesn't matter if it's a specific religion or not, but I want to honor your roots and what you've done with this. I'm also fascinated by two aspects that we've never discussed before. First, you were talking about history, and we all know that history is written by the victors or by each side. So in a way, it's good that you've put a peg in the ground from the person at the center of this story, that is going to be probably manipulated by different people for political, I suppose, purposes. But here you tell it as it is. So I think that's quite important. Go ahead. You were going to say something.
Angie, you're saying something very important right now. The reason why my book I published first in English, not in Spanish, because let me tell you, my first version was in Spanish, because the letter I wrote in jail was in Spanish, not in English. So I had to translate it to English, and I decided to publish first in English. And you know why? Because Venezuela today is going to elections in 1 month. So I was thinking, if I publish my book first in Spanish, it can get caught in the middle of the political thing in Venezuela, because I say things there that maybe can be manipulated, or maybe can say, no, that's not true. Well, that's what happened, because that's where I was there. And, you know, I went through a situation, Angie, that for reasons of God, I don't know how to say this here, but the only person that knew the story, the real story, was my boss that died 1 year after, and me. and he's dead. So the person that, as I said in my introito in my book, the only person that could confirm what I say in my book was him, and he's died. So that's why I say my true story, because this is my story.
And I also, I think it's particularly poignant for me in Europe. So, we're traveling all over the world here, which is kind of fun because we're having elections at the moment in the UK and in France as well. And you're saying there's elections in Venezuela. And for me, I've been reminded recently of how fragile democracy is and how we take democracy for granted in the West. And I find that when you talk to people like you, Jose, who have had a firsthand experience of what dictature or a political, I suppose, background that is not democratic, how it feels like, it's kind of sobering. And I'm hoping that it's also going to wake up people, that they don't become complacent around the institutions of their own country, around the importance of voting, of being active citizens, because when you lose democracy, you lose much more than you think that you do.
Today, Venezuela to a very interesting process because this regime has 25 years. So they took the power during 25 years. And maybe in 1 month, these guys are going to be thrown out because the Pira lady, that today is the opposition candidate, this lady has more than 20 years around. Nobody took care of her because they saw her like a right-handed extremist lady. But now everybody knew that she was the real candidate. And she has created a momentum as a opposition that I never seen. So now the possibility of a real change in Venezuela is in less than 1 month. So that's why I want my book to get cut in the middle of the situation because
that's quite wise. You want to be beyond that,
noise. I'm not saying that somebody can pick the English version and say, hey, see what this guy is saying there. I don't know. Maybe it can happen. But I didn't want that to create that noise because that's not my intention on my book. Somebody told me, no, but it's good that you create that noise. No. I don't want to create my noise because my real intention on my book, of course, that my story is told, but I have two real intentions. One is raise the awareness of this hostage situation that is going in the world that is terrible. And I was a victim. And the second is leave the legacy that's more important for me for the future, that the people can really realize that if I went through that situation and I could survive it, in the life, you can survive anything in the life. So this is my real message behind this. Because at the end, when you get to the end of the book, you're going to read the last chapter that is my reflections. And when you go to reflections, you will see what is my thinking of what is my takeaway, my lesson learned through all this case. Because as I said, I took the time because I could have published the book 1 year ago. But I decided really consciously to take me the time, the first to put my words out, big, well-known, and as you said, I'm being all over the place because I've been putting my message. But at the same time, I wanted to be more reflective and to understand all the process and how, for me, that has been like a personal growth. And I always say that I'm not glad what happened to me, but I'm really glad the lessons that I learned after what happened to me.
So would you say that you had, well, we don't want to diminish the trauma that you went through, but you had two growth sort of cycles, one going through the experience and then maybe one reflecting back whilst you were writing your memoir?
Yes, definitely yes, because I have my therapist that I talk every Thursday with her. So I have already almost, since I came back, almost 2 years talking with her. Well, 1 year and maybe. And she, and by the way, we are very friends today. And she tells me that the way I decided to face this and begin to talk and begin to reflect and verbalize have been really not only helping me in my healing process, help me really understand how this really can help others. Because I went to a situation that can be one of the worst situations that anybody can have in their life after. The worst is die, of course, but the second is losing the freedom. I don't how terrible can be something that losing your freedom, and the way we lose the freedom, because you can lose the freedom because you commit a crime or you do something wrong, but we were taken because these evil people wanted to use it. So it was like a human trafficking, what they did to us. It was a crime against the humanity. They took us knowing that we were innocent, and they put a false charge, sham trial. But this is not only Venezuela, all these countries does it. Yesterday began the trial of a New York journalist that is kept in Russia. His name is Ivan Gershevik. It came yesterday. It's a sham trial. They're going to condemn him. They're going to put him 20 years, something like that, because the intention of these guys is to do the trial, condemn you, and then negotiate you. So
then they use you as a pawn. Yeah.
That's what this guy do. All these countries, China, Russia, Iran, Afghanistan, Syria, Myanmar, Venezuela, Cuba, all these, North Korea, all this evil club, what they do is a copy-paste. So that's why, for me, and this is something really serious, it's called the hostage diplomacy, because it's a very sophisticated way to do diplomacy. Because now they can find, I don't know if you saw, yesterday was the debate between Trump and Biden, and one of the conversations was exactly the hostage situation. I remember that Trump was blaming Biden that he has been soft with his government. Well, maybe that's a position. But let me tell you, this is something very serious, because you get caught in the middle of the fight between two countries. So the only way you can get released is that they get an agreement. And sometimes the agreement takes difficult decisions, and the government has to swallow the decision and to bring the people back. So there's a decision, or you get left behind, or they agree in something, but they use you as a pawn. You become a pawn. That's what happened to us.
Yeah, and that's terrifying, really, isn't it? I mean, I see it's a parallel that I hope you won't mind me doing, but I see during election time, as part of the population in the UK has been used as the pawn. Usually it's immigrants. Every single election, the immigration debate gets raised. It's within the same country. We're not talking about diplomacy, but it is just as upsetting. Or it could be a small population, part of the population that is, vilified and used as in a ping pong game, and that is always upsetting. It's awful.
There is a famous case in UK, a lady called Nazanin Zaghari Ratcliffe. And she was like 5 years hostage in Iran, and she came back like before me, maybe 2 years ago, and I believe she's suing the government. I'm not sure, because she has talked that she was caught because of the situation because she was caught, and they were asking to the UK to pay a very old debt before the Iranian revolution, something like that. It was something crazy. So that lady stayed like 5 years until they get the negotiation, because you get caught in situations that you cannot control. In our case, Venezuela begin to ask for us. They get sanction relief to the country. Then they begin to ask sanction relief to the people that they were sanctioned. Then they begin to ask to get lifted the oil ban. Then and the negotiation went back and forward, and then they begin to get us swapped by a very famous drug lord called Al Saab. So all these four things didn't happen, but it takes 5 years to this negotiation. And at the end, we came in through the sixth option that we were negotiated by the two nephews of the president of Venezuela. So we went through 6 negotiations. That's why these cases sometimes you stay for years, because it takes. There has to be the high politics. And by the way, here in the US, you had to get agreement between the two parties. So it's like in UK, you had to have bipartisan agreement because you had to sign documents, you know.
Mm. Oof. So talk to us about the process of writing that memoir. You mentioned earlier that you had the letters translated, or did you translate them yourself? Did that take you back? Did you need extra support from your therapist? How was the process for you?
Question. Thank you for asking, because I maybe have never talked about the process, how it went. To your audience that maybe didn't hear my first interview or the some I have been doing, the way I wrote my book is based on the letters that during 3 years I could smuggle with my wife. How I did it, because the first year of my captivity, we were separated at 6. We were solitary, each in all different places. And that year was terrible for us because we were lack of food and medicine, and we were having a lot of illness because already they were playing sanctions to the country, and then the economy was scrambled. So we were going a very bad situation. And then it came a commission of the UN, and they began to pressure, because by that time the US ambassador also was recalled. So our situation escalated so high that they recalled the US ambassador. Until today, there is no US ambassador in Venezuela. Can you imagine that? So after that year that the UN intervened, they begin to relax a little bit our situation. So they decided to put the 6 together, and they begin to allow us to have food provided by our families, and books and medicine, etc. Because if not, maybe we would have died. And my family decided to begin to provide me food. It was a very sophisticated logistic, because my wife began to send me food from the US to Venezuela, but that was not working because the sanctions was really difficult to put the food in Venezuela. So my eldest son moved to Colombia. He moved to Bogota, and from Bogota, he began to supply food to Venezuela. It was easy because it's in the border. And he stayed during 4 years. So what, 4 years doing that? Every week he did a grocery. He sent it in a box to Venezuela, and somebody in Venezuela picked up the box, and the wife of that guy cooked me and then sent me the food every 2 days. So imagine that logic.
Yeah.
During
very
years.
creative. I mean, I don't mean to dismiss the process, but very creative. Yes.
It worked. I stayed during 4 years receiving food that way and medicine. And let me tell you, never, they left me behind. Every 2 days was the food coming to me. So when I did, every 2 days I had to return the food. I had to return the trash cans to the guy to wash it and bring new food, because there was no cans. But the country didn't have nothing. So he had to recycle the cans. So in those cans, I did a double bottom, and it began to smuggle letters in the bottom.
I see.
That's the way I did. So those letters, when I came back in October 2022, I found, because the guy, he took a photo, he sent it via WhatsApp to my wife. My wife received it, she printed, she read it, and she answered to me and sent it the answer. So 2 days after, I received the answer of her. And we did like a secret code in the case that letter could be discovered. For some reason, they never discovered them. So I already compiled it, like around 1,000 letters. And when I came back, not only my wife has compiled them, she put it in Word. So already the letters were in Word. So kind of the real editor of my letter was my wife, because she already had taken the time that put it in Word and formatted. And so, as I said, if I would really wanted to publish the book 1 month after, I could maybe have done it. But I said, nobody knows me. So who I'm gonna publish a book that nobody's gonna read because nobody knows me. So I said, let me begin to talk, to say who am I, what I went through, and why I want to begin to talk about this terrible situation. And that's why I decided to do that. And I created, I believe, my own brand today. And they say, okay, now is the moment that I'm gonna publish a book. And for me, it was great because I could reflect. So when I went back, when I decided like 3 months ago that seriously now I'm going to publish, I decided to go to the selection of the publisher, etc., etc. It came like 40 publishers to me. So I choose one, X. And when I begin to work with this guy, I begin to review what's going to be my final manuscript. I begin to find a lot of gaps because one of the things, because the memory is terrible, because I didn't recall that the year after, the year before, sorry, that I came, that last year, already the negotiation with the U.S. government were in place. They were going back and forward to Venezuela. So they really relaxed the last year our situation, and we begin to receive more phone calls. So I stopped writing letters. That last year, I didn't write letters. I was always talking. And that's why I had that gap. And I had the gap of the event that happened after I came. So I had to revisit my book and incorporate gap. So that's why it took me like 3 months to go back to event. I had more information because now my wife, because I had my story in my head, but I didn't have some part of the story because my wife and my eldest son had more information that I didn't have. Because our case, as I said, began to go so political that we were 6 guys, 6 families. So the U.S. government talked with the 6 families. They were having direct conversation. There was routine conversation. My wife went 2 times to the White House, and she was every month going to the State Department, or they were coming to here to Houston. So one day they said, okay, we need a focal point for family to have a director. And my eldest son, the one that was in Bogota, he was designated by my family as focal point. So he began to have direct conversation with the government. Even any conversation, they have meetings, and they came. So he began to be my focal point. So my son had a lot of information that I didn't have. So I needed to incorporate all those events.
Of course.
That you will read my book. You will read things in my book that I say there because I know, because my family told them to.
Wow. And can I ask you, Jose, what was the personal benefit of you writing your memoir? What do you think you've gained from doing that?
Well, there are several. One of them is telling the story, the really what was the real story. Because as I say, maybe not today, but in the future, the story is going to be told in the Venezuelan. It's going to be part of the story in Venezuela. We became the guys that, because our situation put after years with our ambassador and no direct conversation, the U.S. decided to talk with the Venezuelan government because of our case. So we literally reopened the relation between the 2 countries. You never thought that could happen, but that was what really happened. And so I wanted to put that, record straight that what happened. That's the first thing. Second, that I want to really raise awareness that these things that are happening in the world that people doesn't know. And third, my legacy that have that message to the people that even we went to a terrible situation, because I narrate their terrible events. When you go to the second part of the book, you will see terrible events there. So be prepared. Be prepared where you.
You want to give a trigger warning to people when they read the book, yeah?
I can tell you, my wife always said that the people that read that it doesn't cry are not human beings. He said,
"Oh dear, yeah, no, it's."
He has read that several times and always finish crying when she read those chapters. After the chapter 11 is a roller coaster that comes, a real roller.
I'll have to prepare myself a bit. Thanks for the warning. So I've seen you interviewed and speaking at conferences relentlessly in the past 9 months, or even a year now. It's going to be a year in September. How do you make sure that you don't burn out, Jose? Because you've already been through the ringer, haven't you?
For me, it has been like a calling, to tell you the truth.
Okay.
I really feel a calling that I needed to put this message out because, as I said, I really needed to raise the awareness. And I believe that today, by the way, today I'm very connected with all these foundations that work in this area. One of the foundation in July is going to appear my article. When it appears, I'm going to share with you, where they ask me, how is my life after I came, and how is the family. So I did like a reflection about that, because this has been really, really terrible. That reinsertion, the reintegration is difficult.
Yeah, I can imagine, because it's, everybody likes a happy ending, but actually coming home wasn't the happy ending. There were more
Never.
problems facing you when you came back.
And let me tell you something else. And now that I'm connected with the hostage community, I know many cases of other hostage. All of them are going through the same situation. I'm not unique. I'm not, maybe at a different level, but all go through situation. Can be emotional, physical, mental, or financial, or maybe the four, because things are like stupid. Like you have a credit card that your family didn't know that you had, because you handled it by your own, and now you have a debt of 5 years unpaid with a monstrous debt, or you have IRS issues. So things like that, simple like that, that come and you find a financial nightmare that you didn't create it. It was part of the problem.
Wow. No, I can only imagine. And I seem to remember from our interview last September that you said that there was a crucial moment for you in that time when you were captive, when you were given a specific book.
Oh yeah.
So would you like to share what the book was? Because you're talking about a calling, and I think this book helps people find meaning in life, no matter what happens.
Well, let me tell you, today I'm very, for some reason in life, there is a lot of parallelism with what happened to me, or six guys. But I'm talking about me, how I felt. I see a lot of parallelism, respecting the importance of the character of the book. But when I begin to have the opportunity to read books, I remember, because that book came to me through a general. With me was a general, a high-ranked general that has been defense minister of Venezuela. He was in jail because he became a position of the government, and they took him as a political prisoner. So he was my neighbor of cell. And that guy, because he was a very high-ranked general, a three-star general, this guy, they treat him like, have like a respect, because he was a high-ranked general. So
Yeah.
he always read books. And one day, and he always receiving piles of books. And one day he comes to me and said, "Hey, Jose, I read this book. It's awesome. Read it. You're going to feel it. That's really interesting." When I got the book, was a book called Men in the Search of a Meaning of Viktor Frankl.
Yeah.
I never read the book. First time I heard about that book. Never. Today I'm aware that it's one of the most inspired book in the world, but for me, it was the first time I read it.
I haven't read
So
it myself, so it's interesting. Yeah.
when I began to read the book, Angie, I got so impressed, because things that I was living in that moment, I read it there. And I said, wow, in a concentration camp. So this guy were applying Nazi techniques to us. Things that this guy narrated in his book, they were doing to us the same. So they were applying Nazi techniques to us. So we were literally in a concentration camp. So that's why for me it was so impactful, the book, because this guy, one of the things that he wrote, and that's why his book became so famous, is because he talked to inspire people for generations to come. That when you find purpose, your purpose, and he said that even in the suffering you can find the purpose. He found his purpose, and he wrote his book. So I said, hey, this guy is talking to me. And that was one of the reasons why I decided to write my book.
I find it wonderful that we can be inspired by other authors. to share our own story and how that can, because even though I don't know if the message is similar to Frankel's book, but we need to hear these stories in many different flavors, in many different characters, with many different voices, because everybody's touched by a different story, if that makes any sense. So I'm wondering to a certain extent where your story is not going to speak a lot to all these executives, maybe who are, at CEO level like you were, or CFO or whatever, and who might not go through the same situation as you, but who need the inspiration, and who best to get it from than one of their peers,
And I can tell you that you can be in a most wonderful position in life, like I was. Sorry, I was in the pinnacle of my career when this happened to me. So I was in a stage that everybody could wanted to be, but was in the worst moment going the political tension. So I consciously said, I don't like what is going. I'm gonna get retired. But you can be a CEO of a company. You never know when things bad come because you never announce. So you can be I see the people that are successful, good for them. But you have to take consideration that you never know when things bad can come to you. How you're gonna react? What is gonna be your reaction to that? Are you gonna be depressed or are you gonna success? So that's my message, and not only to a CEO, because you can be to any adversity in life. Name anything in your life that you're facing today. So how you want to be seen in the future, like a guy that failed and got depressed and never made it, or you want to be a guy that say, okay, I went through this, but now I'm here. Because the lessons is that you have your own purpose. Because again, I'm a God believer, but that God has a master plan for you, or whatever entity you believe, there's always a master plan for you. But sometimes you have to go through a lot of situations in life. How you want to go to point A to point B, or you want to get stuck in the middle, or you really want to go there. So that is part of the reflection that I have in my book.
No, I find it fascinating, and thank you so much for sharing this with us. I have two more questions I want to ask you before we finish this interview, because I don't want it to go over the hour, and we could talk for hours, just to say, couldn't we? But so I have a, go ahead.
Get bored. I will never get bored telling my story, because always there are things that are tweaks in the story, the things that our story has so much thing. Before we finish, and let me say something before I forget, because I'm working with a Canadian producer that he wants to put my story out, and we're working in first in a short anthology, and he's thinking to pitch a docuseries. So we were talking 2
That
days
would be
ago.
amazing. Yeah, that would be amazing.
I'm gonna say it here for first time. I'm having these conversations. It's gonna be first a short film as an anthology, as part of a set of anthologies, and then they're gonna thinking to pitch the whole docuseries
Yeah.
of
Wow.
or maybe the movie. I don't know. But he was telling with the other guys, and he was saying, Jose's story has so much that you can have, I don't know, 10 chapters in a docuseries, because our story, when you go to the final chapter or a book, has so much roller coasters that you say, hey, man, how these guys made it. We went through the crazy things there. The most crazy thing that you can imagine happened to us. You will read
it. So I'm wondering, and I hope I don't offend you by asking you this question. I'm wondering if God has a sense of humor, because a month before you were taken hostage, you actually invited to your annual conference a man who went through something very similar to you, maybe for a shorter period of time. I haven't watched the film, so I don't know the circumstances. Captain Phillips, who was featured in a film and actually acted by Tom Hanks, came to do an inspirational talk to your people, 500 people.
Yeah. Yeah, that's totally true. No, no, that was not God playing joke. I believe that guy for me was an angel, because
Okay.
what he that day prepared me for the event that was going to happen 1 month after. Because that guy that day, when he finished his speech, by the way, he was a hostage by the Somali pirates. He
Yeah.
was a big tanker, oil tanker, and he was coming from Somalia when he was captured. I don't remember how long he stayed, but the story that he told me that day, that the movie was only the half of the situation that happened to him.
Yeah.
So it was worse. I don't have the details. But what's our journey? I saw the movie. The movie was quite of wow, where this guy is going. So I told him, man, what a journey. But he told me that the human being has that inner force that you can unleash it. What you need is to tap it, because you're connected to God. He's a God believer too. So when that guy told me, it really cut. Wow, that I was driving back to my home and said, wow, what a message. And I kept thinking on that. 1 month after happened my situation. And that day
Yeah.
that we were handcuffed in an armored truck going to the military basement we were put, I was thinking in that guy. Really, really, that for me, that guy was kind of an angel. And the other thing that I can say here, because I'm saying I'm today a guy connected to my church. One of the things the other day, my pastor was talking, it's something that, hear the reflection, that when something is going to you, you can have intersections or intervention.
Okay.
Intersection is when something is going to happen and God intercepts you. He takes you out. And intervention is when already the situation happened, he takes you out. When there is an intervention, is because you're in the hole already. He takes you from the hole. When that happens, always is a loss. In the first thing, there is not a loss because it happened before the situation happened. That was our case. I was
Okay.
going to a situation terrible because the political situation between the U.S. and Venezuela was affecting me. I was having a high blood pressure. I was suffering
Yeah.
overweight, drinking a lot. I was having a super stress. I was
Your
literally,
sleep also was very bad, wasn't it?
I,
You tell, yeah.
I was literally going to collapse. So if this situation didn't happen to me, maybe I died. And for some reason, I went to this situation and I began to starve. I lost 100 pounds. Now they begin to bring me food. And the person that began to cook me, she began to cook me very, very healthy. And I stayed eating healthy during years. Today, I don't have problem with the blood pressure. The problem that I had with the diabetes is gone. And the problem that I had with the thyroid is gone. Magic, it's gone. I go today to my work, blood work, and all this stuff. Everything is okay. So things that happen.
No, I like how you framed it as as someone like a human angel coming to you to give you what you needed to take you to the next step, which is probably when this general gave you that book, almost like a relay. Here, I'm going to give you this, and I'm going to give you this, and you're going to be that person as well, that human angel for someone else as well, I'm sure.
The other day, I did when I did my virtual book launching party. I did a LinkedIn audio room, and I invite. By the way, I believe I invited you, but maybe you. So I begin to invite all the people that have been part of my journey during this time, and it show up a lot of people that had time without hearing them. People that have been connecting, because for me there has been a great connection. How much people have been knowing all over. So there is a guy that today I'm connecting. He lives in Germany. He lives in Germany. And that day, because like 2 days before I had the luncheon party, I'm today part of a group that we meet here in Houston every the third Saturday before the month end. We have a meeting, and we are people over 60 years, I today 62, people over 62, senior citizens that do life in our church. So it's a group that belongs to the church. And it's called the Golden Heart. It's a wonderful group because we go, we have fun, they do prizes, the people joke. It's a lot of comrade people, but maybe there are people over 70, 80 years. And, it becomes really warm, very friendly. Well, one of the ladies that was part of that group, that she was like the soul of the group. She was always singing, and her wife was the guitar player. They were always joking and laughing and having fun. That day of the event, she began to feel bad, and they went to the ER, and she passed. She passed less than 1 week ago. And when we knew that she had passed, everybody was like in shock. And I was thinking, wow, how is life? You have to live your life. So in that event, I talked about her case. And I said, whoever is hearing this in this moment, if you're having problems with the people in your life, take the phone and say that you love them and forgive them. And that guy called me, the guy that my friend from Germany, he called me. And he told me that he was walking his dog in this moment, hearing my program. And he had finished his relation with his fiancée. And he told me, you know what I did after I heard you? I called her, and now we're back together. So literally, I saved a soul that day.
That's lovely. Yeah.
You never know when I hear your message.
Well, Jose, it's been such a delight to talk to you again. Thank you so much for accepting to come on my page, and it's going to be published, as we discussed, probably on YouTube as well. So I would like to know how people can find you, how they can find your book, and generally, how they can follow your story, because I'm sure it's not going to be the end of it. Especially if you're having filmmakers interested in, and I'm not surprised. It's such a big story.
Yeah. We're beginning maybe what's gonna come first is gonna be the anthology. And I'm gonna say here very shortly, what we're working is anthology, is 4 stories that are apparently not connected, but there is a connector of the 4 stories. Story is one of the 4 stories. So that this anthology is gonna be 4 shorts that together are going to be a whole film. And they're planning this for the next year to the Cannes Festival. So that's the goal.
Yeah. That's the main exciting
goal. It's a goal because this guy, the main producer, is a guy that is a former Hollywood producer, but he's very connected with the Cannes people. He was a jury in Cannes this year. So that's the main goal that we're working now. But at the same time, the director of my story of the 4 is the same guy that is working with me, pitching our story as a docu-series to the mainstreaming. And he's planning, if we are successful, to do a 6-chapter docu-series. And in the future, I don't know if that is going to become a movie. That will be the next step. But that's what we're working today in that area, okay? But if you want to find me, the most easy way is going to my webpage. My webpage is very easy, Jose Connect, all together, joseconnect.com. When you go to my webpage, the first thing that will appear is all the links to the place. There is my book, because that's why I'm promoting today. So you will find there the link to Amazon, to Barnes & Noble, to Lulu, to digital, to like 6 or 7 links all over the place, where you can find it in Kindle, in ebook, in Amazon, in Barnes & Noble, etc. In the same page, you can find my coaching program that I have my speaking program, and I have a lot of videos there. Like, people see me, because I today speak in Spanish and in English, in both. And I have several speaking gigs there. I have my podcast. By the way, your podcast is there. I have it there in my webpage.
Oh, that's lovely. Thank you.
Is your podcast. The one that I did with you, because it was a really lovely podcast. I have my interviews that have been done in TV, etc., articles, because now I'm invited to write articles. And I'm very active in LinkedIn and Facebook, but more in LinkedIn. I have my own newsletter that you can find it also there. And well, everything is there. The
I'll
most
share all the links. I'll share all the links on my page, but also on YouTube so people can find you. And I'm really sorry I didn't attend your launch party. I don't know what went wrong here, but I'm so glad we're catching up today and that you were kind enough to give me over an hour of your time to talk about this. I'm very touched, Jose. I really appreciate this. And I'm
thank you.
sure my listener will too as well. So I'm going to stop the recording for now. I'm going to thank people for watching this video.